All right, welcome back here to the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. We're so humbled that you would join us again. I really am appreciative. We're getting near the end of our season three whole years of doing this podcast. And you know what? I'll tell you what, it has been a blast every single episode all the way through as we hit number 182 today for today's podcast. So before we introduce today's guest, just a quick shout out, quick update. If you are going to be at the USTF CCCA convention in December, we're taking the show on the road. I was challenged to do this, and I don't know, maybe I should have not done this challenge, but we're going to do the podcast live at the convention. So we're going to do a recording right in the Gill Athletics booth down there in the vendor area from 5 to 7 p.m. the very first night, that Monday, 12/12, December 12th. So we're just going to have coaches come by. If you're there, please come by. We're just going to do 5-ish minute kind of short, quick interviews there and just do it live through YouTube. So if you're not at the convention, you can join us on YouTube live and participate through the chat, and we'll just have a great time. And or no one's going to show up, and you'll just have to listen. I'll talk for 2 hours, and you'll hang up, and this will be the worst event that we've ever done in the whole world. So hopefully you'll be there December 12th, 5 to 7 p.m. Denver time at the USTF CCCA convention. Okay, let's get on to it today. I'm pumped. I might have laughed more in the little pre-interview we just did than any guest I've ever had before. So I'm kind of excited for this one. Help me welcome the head coach of UNC-Asheville, the wise, the wonderful, Mr. Joel Williams. Joel, how are you, sir?
Good. Are you, Mike?
Well, I'm doing good now that we actually are here.
Right.
Do you, I didn't even ask, are you okay? Can we kind of share?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So, because I thought it was, I wasn't involved, so I thought it was comical. You actually had to deal with it, Joel. So Joel and I have had this scheduled now for about a week and a half, and we've had to pause it to put it on to delay it a little bit because Joel, you're going to tell us why. Joel literally, I mean, he wasn't trying to get out of this. Joel lost his voice. He called me up one day, and I thought it was like it was near Halloween, so I thought it was like a spooky, prank call. He sounded bad, my man. So Joel, what happened? Because you sound way better now, my friend.
Yeah, I don't sound great, but I definitely are a much improved version of what I was a week ago. I had a pretty significant sinus infection, and it just led to a really sore throat and then essentially laryngitis.
Oh.
So it's been a slow road back, but I'm getting there. So
yeah, because you were, like I said, at first I was like, oh, this is Joel's way of he's getting out of here. And then when we talked on the phone, I felt so bad because you were like, oh, Mike, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. And I felt bad every word you said. I was like, yeah, Joel, no, it's good. Don't talk. You let me know, email me because it sounds like it hurts.
And that's why I wanted to call you. I wanted to make sure that you understood. It's easy to say, hey, I have laryngitis. I can't do it through email, but I wanted you to hear it without putting on any kind of act. It was definitely not an act. I did enjoy not being able to speak. So,
buddy, yeah, I couldn't imagine. Hopefully that never happens to me because I don't know how we'll do a podcast if that ever goes down, man.
Yeah,
so
it might have to delay a bit.
So. Yeah, can you do a podcast just through text messaging? Maybe I could do it that way.
Might have to find out. Well, hopefully you won't have to.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. Well, Joel, we started this podcast many years ago now to uplift and honor coaches around the country. This is one of those, I've said this before on a few podcasts. These are the most exciting for me personally as the host here is because, Joel, you and I actually don't know each other. I have to think just in your coaching career and my coaching career in Gill that we've at least passed ways and have said hi or something at convention or something, but we certainly don't know each other. And these type right here are my favorite in the whole world because it's a blank slate. I just get to kind of learn along with the audience about how you got into coaching and the stops along the way and just kind of philosophies and things like that. So I'm super excited about today.
Same here. Yeah, I'm very excited. Like I said, I've enjoyed a lot of your podcasts in the past, and I appreciate getting a chance to be with you today.
Oh, that means a lot to me, Joel. Thank you for that. So, Joel, I'd like to start these podcasts out by asking, at some time, assuming that you were an athlete, coaching changed for you in your mindset. It went from something just strictly that was done to you, go run this, go throw this, whatever, to like, wow, like this could actually be my career. Like I could do this. Where does coaching begin for you?
I go way back to the early 80s. I can recall, of all places, a 2-part article in Runner's World magazine. And it was by George Gandy, who was Sebastian Coe's collegiate coach. His dad was his coach his whole career. but George Gandy was responsible for programming his circuit training, his strength training, his plyometric training, speed drills, etc. And it never dawned on me. Of course, I was very young, but it never dawned on me until that point. Like, oh wow, you don't just go run to be a good runner or a good athlete. There's many different, we would say at this point, like multilateral training. There's a lot of different avenues to getting better, and that fascinated me even at a young age. It doesn't mean I got right into coaching, because I still had to go through middle school, finish middle school, go through high school. And then I recall also a book by Jim Murray called Inside Weightlifting and Weight Training. And it was in it, it refers to track and field news. And it said some people's strength programs are actually listed in track and field news articles sometimes. And just the fact that there was a magazine devoted to track and field is fascinating. It's like, oh, I kind of like that sport. Let me find out a little bit more. So that around that same year, 1980, I kind of got an interest in coaching and a greater interest in learning more about the sport.
Did you, I love that. I'm a reader myself, so I love that reading kind of sparked this, like, oh, wait a minute, there's coaching, like people do this, right, and there's multilateral, there's different ways of doing this. Can you remember, did you, like, the next day you went to practice, did you look at coach differently in the sense of like, oh, wait a minute, I could be you. I never thought I could actually be you.
And I honestly thought too about, wow, there's a lot of things we're not doing that I just read about, which isn't to say it was wrong. It was just, this coach chooses to do these things. This coach chooses to do these things. Another coach chooses to do maybe a combination of those items. So it just made me realize, wow, every program isn't going to be the same, that there's going to be variety from coach to coach. And a lot of that is born in their influences.
I'm glad that you mentioned track and field news. We actually had the managing editor, E. Gary Hill, as a guest way back in the day. And, it's one of those, I know they kind of self-titled themselves the Bible of the sport, but I remember that through high school and college. And what a great, I kind of miss, I'm a digital guy, so I love digital things, but for reading, I still like that paper in my hand.
And they've gone back to that too as an option, I believe.
Oh no, is that right?
Yeah, it's digital, but I believe you also now have the paper option again. I think I started that in the last year, maybe. I could be wrong about that, but I think you have both options now.
Oh, I'll have to look into that, because I miss, it's one thing to see. I told Gary, and it's still true to this day, the trackandfieldnews.com is kind of like my my New York Times or my Wall Street Journal. Right. Some people, that's how they wake up. And so when I get into the office, the first website I pull up is Track and Field News, to look down their headlines and see
on the right side.
Yeah.
And then their own feature articles on the left side.
Yeah, you know it, man.
That's where we get Track Coach, used to be Track Technique. That's where I find that there, if you have subscription to that. But I do the same thing. It's and it's like usually something you may not find anywhere else, like, oh, that happened yesterday or today.
I live my life on Twitter, mostly because where I get a lot of news and information. There's still things I find on trackandfieldnews.com that did not show up on Twitter yet. It's right. So awesome, man. Well, that's awesome. I love that. That's how you kind of got your foray into coaching. Did that spark through high school? Did that spark more reading and researching into how to train for track and field? And were you doing any other sports?
I was football for part of high school, and then we moved Atlanta to North Carolina. And I quit playing football, but I stayed with track. I wasn't very good. I feel like I could have made some better decisions on how I train myself. Looking back, of course, now after all these years, you better have figured out something better. What are you doing? What have you learned? But I ended up getting a subscription to and I'll give my mom credit for this. My mom always inspired me to read to learn, read for entertainment, but educate yourself, at least informally, through reading. So I can recall anytime we go to a drugstore or a newsstand, that if I wanted a magazine or a book, I don't know that she ever turned me down on that. So I give my mom total credit for that. But I actually got a subscription to the NSCA back in the early 80s. And that kind of that sparked an interest in strength training, how it affected athletics and athletic performance. So I was reading those books, and I was reading a lot of books early on. I love to read. And just the ideas you get. Sometimes it's a reminder of something you did in the past that you maybe, I wonder why I let that go out of my program. I need to bring that back in. things like that. But yeah, I love reading. I think that's the way you stay current, and
Yeah.
that's a way to spark new ideas.
Yeah, I agree. As a lifetime learner and reader, I 100% agree with you. It's interesting what you're kind of describing here. I feel like you're talking about like a manual version, an analog version of internet coaching. So, in
Yeah,
today's world, we talk about kids like, oh, get off the YouTube, get off the social media, all these, air quotes, internet coaches. Trust me in my program. You're doing this on paper back in the day because we didn't have those things. So
right.
you're reading track and field news and NSCA as a high schooler. Good Lord, you're a little bit overachiever on that one. How did that work with your relationship with coach as you're learning things and remember what a different era back then. We didn't have YouTube and clinics and online clinics and USATF coaching education and things like that. We didn't have those as readily available.
Right.
So how did that work within your relationship with your high school coach?
Well, I remember getting after getting a subscription to Track and Field News, I ended up started ordering some of their books. One of the best ones was Training Theory by Frank Dick.
Oh yeah.
On the 5 biomotor abilities. And then McFarland later expanded that to 6 S's, including psychology as an S. But that was really important. And I ordered Track and Field Omnibook by Ken Doherty. And they accidentally sent me 2 copies. So I ended up giving 1 copy to my high school coach who had just been installed as the new track coach. Track and field oftentimes was the guy that drew the draw. It seems like who has no experience coaching track? Me. All right, we want you. But yeah, I know it's not always like that, but a lot of times they would never do that with a football coach, but they would think twice about doing that with track and field. But I gave my coach that, and I think it helped give him some ideas because he was just new to the sport, and I was still new to the sport myself. So I think that helped him, and I think it helped me get an understanding of the sport a little bit better.
How did he react to that? There's a couple of ways he could have reacted.
Right. And I knew him pretty well. He took it very well. I said, Coach,
wow,
I got 2 copies. So I wasn't saying like, I bought you this copy.
Right.
I know you know nothing about sport. Right. Yeah. I'm not saying you should look at this, but you probably should read this tonight. Not suggesting anything, but I just told him the truth about it, that I had gotten 2 copies by accident, and I decided, I wanted to give you a copy, and he appreciated that.
Yeah. Shout out to him, because what he showed there was humility. Because
Dave McConnell.
That was getting to that. What's his name? Dave McConnell. Shout out to Dave, because and even like maybe excusable if you would have said, his reaction was, yeah, thanks, kid. You stay down there. I'll stay in the coaching. But instead he was like humbled and like, hey, well, thanks, man. Let me look into this. Maybe there's something here for sure.
This is West Forsyth High School. This is known for Chris Paul. He went to school.
Oh, yeah.
Pat Thacker, the wrestler who was in City Heat, he went there.
Oh, wow.
2 of the more famous alumni.
So those 2 and you, that's the top 3 right there.
I'm sure they go around telling people they went to my high school.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
I'm going to start a basketball podcast just so I can interview Chris Paul and ask him.
Hey, so tell me about Joel.
Exactly.
Like, who?
Hey, that might be the name of the podcast. Tell me about Joel, Basketball Chronicles. Right. Well, shout out to Dave McConnell, because like I said, that's a stance of humility, to be able to have a kid on his team have an extra book. And you probably explained it right, although we're high schoolers. I don't know maybe if you did explain that right, because we make mistakes as high schoolers, but for him to have that stance and say, okay, let me read it, let's see if we can learn anything.
Right.
So and we didn't actually kind of pigeon it. What kind of events were you sprinter, thrower?
I did. It's kind of odd. I went, typically you move up in distance, and I moved down in distance. I ended up starting in high school, I was like 125, 130. When I graduated, I was about 185. And
wow.
I ended up going from the mile and the 8 down to the 4, the 2, and I ended up just running relays pretty much. And when in the recruiting process, I tell, because if a recruit comes to us and says, here's my relay times, like, I don't know what that even means with respect to you. Well, my dad got this 100-meter split. Like, I don't even know how useful that 100-meter split. I don't know if that was a 90-meter split or what. But if a kid wanted to go to college to compete, I would kind of challenge even the way I did it. I should have asked to do more open events. Or just do open events, period.
And real quick before we start getting into college here, I thought it was important the way you said mom really challenged you to read and really supported it. Like I want that book, boom, done. I want this magazine, great, boom, done. What
Right.
was mom a teacher, or what was her kind of
Now
role in that?
Administrative assistant through a number of companies. I don't know if I guess they're not competitors, but
Yeah.
banks, mortgage companies, etc. But she always encouraged us to read, my sister and I.
Yeah.
My sister was a much better student of the two. She's a Georgia Tech grad.
Oh, yeah.
So she's a much better student than I was. It took me, I call it the 20 for 4 program. It took me 20 years to get a 4-year degree. I had a big gap there.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. The 20 for 4 program. Yeah.
Okay, let's get into this. The 20 for 4. I've heard of the 6-year plans and all this. The 20 for 4. So you go to college. Tell us, where you ended up choosing, and what was your idea for a profession? You went in to do a major because I'm going to become an accountant. What was the initial idea going into college? And tell us about this 20 for 4.
It's I say that, and people like, I'm not familiar with that plan. It's like, that's because it doesn't exist in any type of real world, but it did in mine. But I started at Western Carolina for a couple years,
yeah.
And then when I was there was a guy that had transferred from Appalachian State to Western, and I had talked to him about. I was starting to get an interest in exercise science. I don't know what my initial. I think I was maybe more interested in PE in the beginning, and he said, "Well, there's some really good people exercise science wise at App State." So I ended up transferring there, and he was right. We had outstanding professors, really outstanding. And the App State continues to have its. I mean, I will say this: it's not Appy State; it's just App State or Appalachian State.
Yeah.
But
I went to Troy University, so App State's kind of a rival.
A rival,
so I would call it Appy State, except for their new track facility is all Gill. So they're App State. Yeah. They're Damien and those guys. I love them to death. So
I saw it about 2 weeks ago. Where I think they just finished the concrete, and it looks great.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And you went there. That campus is just bonkers. I mean, just amazing, really amazing.
Interestingly, where the track is now is the old Watauga High School where I started coaching. So the exact location that they're putting your new track in is where we had our high school track and track practices.
Wow, is that right?
My former athletes is the pole vault coach at App State. And I said, how weird is it for you to now be coaching? He just started a week ago at the place where you went to high school and you competed and practiced on this same, certainly not the same track, but the same location.
Yeah.
That's really it, because App ended up buying.
That's wild.
Because the campus, obviously, enrollment has gone so far up, so they had to expand.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's kind of that's weird. Yeah. So you transferred to App State, but where does 20 years come in? You didn't get your degree.
Coaching kind of got in the way. I often, I hope this sounds right. Obviously, I mean this is a, I tell people I ended up getting jobs to support my track habit. And then I just went away from school, and eventually I realized if I want to do something beyond the high school level one, I ended up going back to school, and not for teaching. I wasn't going to get certified to teach. I wasn't interested in that. I had done substitute teaching at the high school, but I was not interested in teaching as a career, even though we know coaching is, if you do it right, it is teaching.
100%. Yep.
But it's not necessarily a classroom setting. So just a bunch of years where I didn't go, and I'm still studying the sport. I'm still studying sports in general. I just realized I got to go back and finish this thing. It's ridiculous to have all these hours and not have completed a degree. So finally I did that. But
so how did you get into you said coach? I love that. That might be the quote of the whole episode right there. Coaching got in the way. I love that. What was you're at App State, you're doing exercise science, and then there had to be some period of dropping out to coach, or what? How'd that happen?
So I had some roommates that were the soccer coaches at Watauga High School in Boone. And one of them had mentioned, the head coach, Doug Kidd, and Earl Morgan was the assistant. He had mentioned, hey, they may have a need for some after school weight training instruction or something. You might want to check that out. So originally that's what was my intention of going over to the high school. This is spring of '94, so 28 years ago. went over there with that idea, and not a lot was going on at that time. There weren't many people in the weight room. I don't even, in fact, when I initially got there, I think it was closed. One or two people came in there. They had a coach working with them. Didn't look like they had a real need. While I was there, they said, hey, the track team needs an assistant coach. And they had just had their first meet the previous week. So this was in their second competition week. And I said, well, I love track and field. What do they have a need for? Sprints, hurdles, just coaching in general, jumps, all kinds of things. Like, well, yeah, I'd like to try that. I don't know why that didn't even register for me initially. Like, why am I not going over there for that?
Right.
The strength training part has always been an interest for me as well. But that opened up, and I was a volunteer the first year, and then I was a paid assistant, head indoor track for the next 11 years, and then assistant for the next 11 years after that.
Wow.
So,
that escalated quickly.
yeah, and like I said, that was never my goal. Not initially, but it kind of all made sense. It's kind of like, maybe this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
I don't think I had as much direction as I maybe should have had at that point, but I think I found my direction pretty quickly. I was like, this may be kind of my calling. I don't know.
When you said it makes sense, it's so funny. I got this picture of a puzzle, and there's one piece left. And when you slide that last piece in, like all the outlines just disappear and it becomes one picture like that. When you said it all makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, that was, he's been doing all these things, and here's the last little piece of his puzzle to give him direction. Yeah.
It's like you're looking for your car keys in every place but your pockets.
Like,
it's my keys have to be over here or in my bags, like, or they could be right where I put them, which is my pocket. So it's easy to say that once everything kind of comes together, but it kind of just made sense.
Do you remember that first, let's say, week or so that you went over to the track team to help? Do you remember, like, was there an aha moment of like, oh yeah, this is it, like just a snap, like, man, I love working with these kids, and they're not that much younger than you, to be real frank, at this point. Or was there like, oh man, the hurdles, I've never done hurdles. This puzzle piece is, I like this challenge of trying to figure out, was there something in there that first week or so that was just like the hook?
Yeah, I would say as soon as you feel as a coach, you're able to bring some contribution for the positive, that you're actually doing something is beneficial, and they can almost sometimes immediately get feedback and realize it. Sometimes not. Sometimes it takes time for those things to sort of, I guess, germinate, would you say? But I remember we had a 25th anniversary of our 1997 state championship team entered the Watauga High School Hall of Fame. This is about 3 weeks ago. And I talking to one of the young ladies on our team, on our relay team and on our state championship team. And I said, I remember having a conversation with you. People always kind of note that I have this strange memory for odd details and the dates and the temperature. It just, it's weird. It's not anything that benefits anybody. It's just there. So I recall her saying, I said, well, what do you feel about your first meet? And she said, I was so sore in my upper body. I was like, well, clearly you need to promote some degree of relaxation. So we need to work on just having you be powerful, but be more relaxed in everything you do. So you shouldn't feel that much tension in your upper body. And that was working on that. And she almost immediately felt a difference. I feel like this, like, okay, maybe this is for me. Hurdles, I'd studied hurdles, but not to the degree maybe of the sprints, but over time, I like the additional challenge that hurdling requires, not only of the athlete, but of the coach. And I think the two works, really well together. Some people think, yes, hurdling and sprinting are two different things, and there's definitely different aspects to it, but they're not so different. But yeah, feeling like you're immediately contributing to someone's success is pretty important, I think, for a coach.
Yeah, I hear that a lot about that instant feedback that, if you go into, you mentioned banks, you go into banking or accounting, you do stuff, but you don't see a result for a quarter later or,
right.
A year later. With coaching, you can come in and with a kid, make, one cue, one change, and there's an immediate change in their performance, because there's so much to change. Even one little thing can, add up to a lot of big things. And so I hear that instant feedback of like, oh man, like I did something, something got better, and that made me feel good. Like I
Right.
gave value to someone. That's what it kind of sounds like, especially with that example of that young lady. It's like, hey, you need to relax shoulders. That'll help you so you don't get so tense. She did that
Right.
and was like, oh, wait a minute, that feels a lot better. Like I feel faster just from that alone.
Right.
We didn't even talk about training, just that.
And her name, it says we're about dropping name,
Uh-huh.
Gary Story, Garrie Story. She's
Oh,
an athletic
wow.
trainer, sort of in Asheboro near Greensboro, that area.
Okay. Yeah.
But and it creates good things on both sides. It gives the coach confidence that what they're saying is actually helping. Two, it creates the buy-in for the athlete. Hey, coach told me this, and I got this. I'm going to look into the whole of everything they're saying, and
Mm,
I'm going to maybe be more coachable. Not to say that she wasn't or that somebody else wasn't,
right.
but it makes it more likely you're going to be receptive to future
Mm.
cues that somebody might give you.
So that year was a volunteer coach. The next year, you're an assistant coach or a stipend coach.
Mhm.
Somewhere around there, you had to have like officially dropped out of school, right?
Yeah, around 94, around 95 or so, I guess. And I ended up working. I delivered office supplies.
Oh, yeah.
That was largely what I was doing. Um, and later on went back to community college, got an AA there, then went back to App and eventually finished it all. But yeah, I took a number of years off, and I kind of just, even though it's track and field and it's indoor, November, track is over in May, except for unless you had some people going to nationals, and we usually did. Sometimes it was our distance kids, which I didn't coach much. We have some great distance coaches at Watauga, but so you could go into June. It could go into June if you had good enough people to go to junior nationals, and we had
Mhm.
some as well.
Well, I'm curious with the support mom gave with reading. So it sounded like education might have been important to her. How'd the family take this? Hey, I'm going to put a pause. Well, you didn't know necessarily it was a pause at that point, but hey, I'm going to stop going to school and deliver office supplies so that I can coach at Watauga.
Right. They were still supportive. I mean,
Oh,
they were just very encouraging of like, you need to keep an eye on going back. Keep that in the
oh,
back of your
yeah.
head that, this is good. Glad you kind of are finding something you're interested in, but at the same time, keep in the back of your head that you want to finish this out. And then they didn't really push it or anything, but eventually I just kind of got tired of having a lot of hours and
Hmm.
not a piece of paper
Mhm.
to go behind it. So
Well, shout out to them because it's weird in today's world. We kids go to college at 18 and graduate at 22, and we expect them to like have their whole life figured out at
right,
22. Like there's so much burden on kids, and I'd say 22-year-old's a kid. So much burden on them. Like you need to have everything figured out at 22. You got a degree, now go do your career, and it's like 22, their brains aren't even fully formed.
right.
I didn't know. I coached until I was 30, so I didn't get this career until I was 30, 31. I mean, it's odd how we, pressure them into this at such a young age. And so I love that they were supportive, like, okay, all right, we're going to support you. Just, keep it in mind. You might want to go back to school, but there
Right.
wasn't like hey, don't show up for Christmas this year because you're an embarrassment to the family.
you
That's
you've been
happened.
right. You've been excommunicated. You and Napoleon are out of here. You got
Yeah.
to go live off on an
that's,
island
that's right.
and
It's
eventually,
happened.
yeah, it definitely has happened.
Yeah. So,
Um,
so talk to us about, you said 11 years as the assistant, correct? At Watauga?
I was 12 years as assistant, uh, 11 years as the indoor coach.
So talk to us about the 12 years as an assistant. What did you do for development? I assume well, not assume. We have to know, just based on your high school and middle school of reading, like you weren't just going to be the track coach you were in 94 and 2004. You were going to improve. What did you do along the way to kind of get better as a coach?
I did get into some of the coaching education. I took level one in 96, and I took a club coach for USA weightlifting also in 97. And then I just did lots of coaching education along the way. Um, and I feel like since I'm one of the few people, I'm the only person on our staff who doesn't have college uh, competition experience. I didn't compete in
Mm-hmm.
college, just
Mm-hmm.
high school. Um, I always felt like I needed to do more. They have their experience and they're going to do their continuing college or their coaching education. I feel like I had to do more in terms of coaching education because I didn't have that experience. So I feel like I needed to kind of give myself some value in places, maybe other places. People, one of the things you see with a lot of collegiate athletes who get into coaching is sometimes they rely on their own experience a little too much. And initially, you don't have anything else to go by. But over time, your own experience should be worth something to where you make changes to your program, adjustments to your program, whether it's through coaching education formally or because you're reading this book and this book and this book and this article. But I always felt like I needed to know more from the coaching education side, the coaching education curriculum, the USA weightlifting, the USATF, the USTF Triple CA. I needed to do more on that to be competitive, to give my athletes, the benefit of that type of education.
Let's put a pin in that. That's an important topic. Let's come back to that real quick. I want to go take one step back here. You talked about level 1 back in 96. I took my level 1 in like 98. This was a really fun time, level 1. Do you remember where and who your teachers would have been?
University of South Carolina. It was Greg Kraft and Larry Judge were the main coaches. It was January of 96.
Man, it's so funny. So I think it was when I was at Troy. That was 98, 99, and 2000 season. So I want to say it was 99. I don't think I did it my first year. So 99 was my level 1 and also in South Carolina.
At USC?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I had I can't remember. I don't think it was Larry or Greg. It was Lori. She was the head coach at Vanderbilt.
Oh, yes. Shepherd?
Yes, Lori Shepherd. So she was the sprints and her, for Lauren Seagrave. He also did sprints, and he was phenomenal. I mean, just phenomenal. Andrew Alden at South Carolina. Yep, right. And I can't remember throws. And maybe it wouldn't have been Larry because I would have remembered because Larry. I went.
Well, Glenn McAtee used to do a lot of things. Of course, he was at Clemson, but
right.
It could have been him.
I wonder if it was Glenn because I remember Larry. I've taught about 30 level 1s in the first part of my career here at Gill. Several of them with Larry, and Larry is just phenomenal. I mean, what a
I took my level 2 throws with him.
Oh yeah, what a teacher. Like I've seen him take an entire class, 30, 40, 50 coaches, who all have their own background, pole vault, sprints, distance. And at the end of the throws and specifically the hammer, it's like, I feel like these guys could go in the ring and at least throw the hammer in some form of that. Like he's so good at the DIY, or not DIY, but learn by doing, like getting up, turning. And it's just like, I mean, it's phenomenal. He was put on this earth to be a teacher and does it phenomenally. So that's so cool. At South Carolina. I was just curious because that time frame, the late 90s, is when I started getting into coach education. So I just remembered some great teachers and then went on to become a teacher. Another thing that's kind of coming out here all along the way, you mentioned it several times, weightlifting seems to be important to you. And not just weightlifting like, I believe our athletes should lift weights, but like learning the strength and I don't even want to call it the strength and conditioning aspect. The strength aspect. Back in the day, you were reading NSCA as a high schooler, for crying out loud. You've taken different coaching education inside of that. Where did that? Tell me more about that aspect for you. That's a little unique in some circles.
I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, really getting an interest in the sport of weightlifting, and then eventually that evolved into, and I still have that interest, but evolved into, how are athletes using those and even just strength lifts to improve performance? And then reading NSCA journals and seeing like periodization roundtables with Dr. Stone and Dr. O'Brien, who ended up being two of my professors at App, who I definitely considered huge parts of why I'm here. I thought, these professors are at Appalachian State. It probably makes sense for me to go there.
That's pretty cool.
I don't remember the timeline of when that came. That may have been after the fact, but just knowing that that's important. It's still for a thrower. We know it's probably extremely important. For a sprinter, jumper, hurdler, though, to me, it's still very, very important. But I also have to recognize that it is supplementary to the sport training, which is why I don't generally like people lifting before, unless there's a big gap. But that's definitely been an area that I've studied for many years, and my programs have definitely evolved over time.
Well, that's what's interesting to me is, at an early age, having a passion for strength and strength training more typically would lead you to be a strength and conditioning coach. Well, no, not even track. No, not track. Going towards strength and conditioning as a profession, or football as a profession, or bodybuilding. And in today's world, we'd say CrossFit, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that it feels like you connected the dots between strength conditioning, or again, I don't want to use the conditioning part, the strength training part, and how it affects performance of an athlete. Not just, hey, how do I make someone stronger and look better? How does that actually transfer to them being a better sprinter or thrower or jumper?
Absolutely. Yeah. Those became important early on. And also to realize that if you're going to use, I know we don't get too technical, but if you're going to utilize, which I do, phase potentiation or block periodization, if you're going to use it, you can't lift heavy all those weeks there. And I know heavy is a relative term, but if you are trying to be successful in your training, you need to challenge the body of the individual, but you can't do it every day, or their main sport training is going to suffer. So knowing sort of when to pick your battles and adjust your training to make the whole of the program better, to make your program truly holistic and one that really works well together, that's compatible. One thing Dan Paff's always talking about is studying other people's programs, finding commonalities. Another a term Boo likes to talk about. But finding commonalities in successful programs, you find 15 programs, 12 of them are doing this thing. You probably should think about doing that thing. Now, you need to know context. You need to know how to use it, why to use it, when to use it. But if you don't understand context, I feel like then you may be just throwing stuff against the wall, seeing what sticks. But just kind of finding how to blend, and that's where the art of what we do comes into play. Like, I love the scientific aspects and what each of those things do for you, or knowing the scientific sort of underpinnings on all the things that we do. But I also like the art of coming up with your own program and being able to do things a little not different just to be different, not the novel stimulus idea. Sometimes that's useful, but doing something because you maybe through your own experience feel like you found a little different way to do it. But you're still using a lot of the same principles that the people that came before you sort of guided you into. And those, like I said, I never have a problem crediting people that I know have influenced me. Like I said, that's a big part of why I've had any success that I may have had.
I love that you brought up Boo and Dan Paff. Boo was a guest on the podcast about a year ago, and is easily our number one most listened to and rightfully so. In fact, if you're listening and you haven't listened to Boo's podcast, in the app that you're using now, just search in the Gill podcast Boo Schexnayder, and you've got to listen to. I mean, to me, it should be mandatory for all coaches, not only because of his background is phenomenal, but we really got into some deep conversations about coaching and coaching as a profession and the professionalism of coaching. He was just very open and forthright. What was awesome, one of the things that I learned during that interview with Boo, is that his mentor was Dan Paff. I thought they kind of, for some reason in my head, I had them coming up in the ranks together. So it was kind of eye-opening for me that Dan was actually his mentor. And so, a little known secret, Joel, Dan will be our kickoff for season 4. So January 2nd, I think, is the first Monday of 2023. That'll be season 4 for us. He's our guest for that. So it'll be interesting to see. I love that you use the word commonalities from him, because it'll be interesting to see the commonalities between his career and Boo, and how, the mentorship of Boo, because I'm a Boo disciple. That's my whole career has changed.
So I would consider myself as one.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Then we are in a club of exclusivity that's fairly large in our market. Thank goodness, because it's his teaching is amazing. So, okay, let's talk about something I said. Put a pin into it. You made yourself vulnerable there, and I'd like to explore that a little bit more if you would be okay with that. You mentioned not having collegiate competition experience. Same boat, by the way. I did not compete in college, and it felt like you were describing like you felt like you had to overcompensate for that because you didn't have that. Tell me more about that. As you know many coaches, you've worked with many coaches. Do you think that actually bore out? And what I mean is, I'm so glad you delved into coaching education, because I think anybody should, whether they were an All-American
Yes.
or not at all. Do you think that actually bore out? Like people who have that experience do have a little, the college competition experience, do have a little something extra that others of us like you and I have to overcome? Or was that maybe just a blown out thought from
I
you?
think initially, yes, but it's whether that actually becomes an issue for you as a coach competing against those coaches going forward is kind of up to us to, we can fix that, or we can find our own path. Like, I think it's a little dangerous for a college athlete to just do what they were. And I guess in the beginning, you don't know any better, but you have chances after that to learn from other coaches. And one thing I've noticed, and I could be completely wrong on this, is when I've gone to a lot of coaching education, you don't see a lot of Power 5 assistants there. And I don't know if that's because those I'm not trying to, I hope I'm not offending anybody, but you just don't. And I've often wondered if they're being discouraged from going to those because, well, you just need to do our program and our program. But I feel like it's healthy for people to know other programs. And then you can make a decision on, this is not a bad idea. I don't want to just completely adopt 100% of what this program's doing, but these one or two things could make a difference, could make some improvement in our program. And I like what Boo has always said about the importance of coaching education, in the sense that when you work with other coaches, and I'm kind of getting a little bit off track. When you work with other coaches, you reach many more people because you're reaching their athletes by extension. So you're going to reach, if you have sound ideas and if your ideas are valid, then you're probably going to reach a lot more people. You're going to influence a lot more people. You're going to hopefully positively affect many more people because you're reaching more athletes through the coaches. Like I said, I went a bit off track.
No, I actually, that's, I almost called the podcast the Gill Athletics Tangent podcast, because I'm a tangent person. So I actually love the way you described how Boo described that, because that's how I describe your role as a coach. And what I mean by that is, whether you coach 2 kids or 200 kids, to me, that doesn't matter, because your positive influence over young people is exponential. So if you coach 2 kids, they go on to become moms, dads, doctors, business owners.
Right.
The things that you impart into them they're going to impart into their kids, into their team members. Maybe they become a coach, which means your influence is now expanded out there. So I don't give we just had someone on the podcast who had 200 kids as a high school coach, and I was like, holy cow, first of all, that's amazing. How did you even corral that many high schoolers? But I'm like, I've also had a person coach on the podcast that coached a team of 10 to start out with, and I was like, those 2 people are equal to me. I understand the numbers are radically different, but they still have such a large influence over society because of the positive influence they make over high schoolers, so 14 to 18-year-olds. So I love that the way that you described that, of like the reverse of like, the more coaches you surround yourselves with that have positive ways of coaching, and you learn from them, well, you're actually getting the benefit of how they've experimented with their kids and their athletes. Like, you're getting more of that. That's so, I love that. That's kind of a very symbiotic way of thinking about the 2 things merging together there.
Especially a successful, well-experienced coach like a Boo, like a Dan, you're also able to benefit by not making the mistakes that they may have made along the way, because they're telling you not necessarily that this is the only way, but this is given these 5 choices, I would probably prefer to go these 2 directions, or one of these 2 directions. So then you can kind of avoid maybe making some of the same mistakes. You're still going to make mistakes. Everyone is. But you can still be beneficiary of their experiences and their trial by fire, their trial and error, I guess I should say. And just, again, making it a better situation for your student athletes, just because, those coaches have made mistakes, but they're telling me, don't do this. Or sometimes I don't even tell you don't do this. Like, maybe this isn't the best way, but you can experiment a little bit if you want. But in general, I would recommend this, or something like that.
I did recently, I saw on Twitter, it said smart people learn from their mistakes, really smart people learn from the mistakes of others. It's like,
Right.
if you've seen someone else make a mistake, learn from that. Don't do that.
Right. I don't think that's a good idea. I'm not going to try that.
Right, right. I also like how you corrected yourself there. The coaches like Dan and Boo, they won't say, hey, don't do this unless it's a safety thing. They're more
Right.
apt to say like, hey, I tried this. Here's how it didn't work for me. But you got to make your own decision. Like, it may be
Right.
different for you, but I like how because when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I don't know that those guys actually tell you don't do this
No.
unless it's a gross mistake. They're more likely to say, hey, I tried this, didn't work out. Maybe you don't want to do it. I don't know, but it's on you.
And I guess if you're ever giving some type of a clinic, you can tell people, I'm not telling you you need to do this or you have to do this. I can just tell you, for me, this is the best way I have
Right.
found, the
Right.
most effective way I've found.
Yeah, it's interesting, the topic of, not only did you have college experience and got into coaching, but how great were you in regards to that college experience? So were you an All-American or a school record holder, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I once had a person tell me that they weren't a track coach. They were another sport coach, but they have heptathlon in college in a small school setting, and was decent. Not, this person didn't score 5,000 points or anything, but, if you finish the heptathlon, by the way, you're athletic. So this person was athletic, right?
Agreed.
And she swore, to my face, she was like, if I coach track, I'd be better at it than you. And I was like, I'm pretty good. And she's like, yeah, but you didn't do it. She goes, you didn't hurdle in college. You didn't high jump in college. The very fact that I did it, I'd be better. And I was like, and to your point about like a little bit of like, maybe she's right. I don't know.
Maybe in the beginning.
Since I didn't do it, maybe she's right. There was a little bit of like that imposter syndrome. And I don't know if that might've been like I'm kind of having a psychology session here, Joel. Maybe that, cause I dug into coach and ed like you. And I don't know. I would not have verbalized it saying, hey, because I didn't do college coaching. It was partly of my background of like, I just love to learn and read. So, okay, I'm in track. Well, okay. The way you read and learn in track is you go to coaching clinics and coaching education and stuff.
Right.
But I remember having Angelo Taylor. He was in one of the level ones that I taught, and I was doing the sprints and hurdles. So I love, I like to have a little fun. So Angelo Taylor, who all respect, sat in the front row of the class. And I was like, hey, here's what's awesome. I was like, I am going to teach you everything you've ever known about hurdles. And here's Olympic, champion and stuff. But he was there. And to his credit, when the distance person was up, he was up there taking notes. When I was doing hurdles, he was up there taking notes. It was really respectful.
And he could have been the guy like, I'm a multiple-time gold medalist.
100%. And what am I going to say? It's like, no, Angelo, you need to learn, So I do wonder, I think to your point, there is some benefit, right? Maybe there's some benefit of having experienced it and done it, but it's not the be all end all. There's plenty of people who have either not done the event at all or were not good at the event who became amazing teachers and coaches at the events, right?
Again, and I think it goes back to what we were discussing earlier. It's what you do with it. It's what if you're first year coaching versus a first year coach who has college experience, competition experience, I would say they probably had the benefit. But 5 years from now, or even 2 years from that point, it doesn't need to be the case. We control that. We control what we read. They always talk about the success you achieve is determined by the books you read, the people you meet, people you associate with. So we have a choice in what it is, directing our own education. So 5 years from then, if that person who competed in college is better than you, are they better than you just because they did what they did, or did they actually out pursue you in the educational field, which all credit to them. But at least we have a chance to make changes towards that. We can't go back and, hey, I want to turn the clock back and I'm going to be a college athlete. No, not possible.
Right.
But what is possible is like, all right, how do I teach these things better? And at least in one sense, it can become beneficial. Even if you had a great college coach, you're generally going to be beneficial of that as you become a coach. But at the same time, if you think that's the only way, you're also mistaken.
Right. Yeah. Last time I checked, I don't believe Mike Holloway was a All-American collegiate hurdler. And he's pretty good hurdles coach.
Yeah,
he's I guess.
If you're into gold medalists and world records.
Exactly.
if that's your
those
thing.
those little, yeah, that's your thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I like that. I like that discussion. And I think it really kind of goes into both directions, right? You could have been a great athlete and you can become a great coach, and you could sit on your laurels and not become a great coach, and vice versa. You could never have done college athletics, college track and field, and you could be a bad coach because you sit around and don't do nothing, or you put it into your place, you put people around you, you learn, you read, and you become a pretty good coach. I remember seeing one of the top kicker coaches in the NFL was an individual who was paralyzed, was in a wheelchair. And I was like, man, I was like, that dude don't kick, but he's pretty good. So wait a minute. That means I don't have to vault it in college. I don't have to vault it at all.
Right.
If I learn, I can be a teacher here. So that was pretty interesting there.
There's a saying about, and you've heard different numbers used for this same example. You can either have 20 years of good experience where you're evolving as a coach, you're learning, or you can have 1 year of bad experience times 20 and you haven't evolved. You haven't gone anywhere. And you just said, well, I've been coaching for 20 years. So then you're relying on just the number of years you coach, but you may not have, you might be doing the same things you did year one. And if you are doing same things in year one and year 20, the exact same things, what is your own experience worth? Have you learned anything from your own experience, or are you just dead set on doing it this way because I did it that way and my high school coach did it this way, therefore it's perfect? Like that can't be the way.
I've said this before because you mentioned that's how my high school coach did it. You know, when you first get into coaching, no matter what level, maybe you were, whether you're an All-American Division I or you only did high school, it doesn't matter. The only thing we know is how we were coached, right? So that's typically how we coach until we read and learn and talk with others and expand, right? That's why I think I'm so excited for like 10 years from now for where athletics, track and field will be collegiately and nationally, because it's bonkers right now. I mean, you're living it today. You know, we're going to get to you being here at Asheville. You know what it takes to make regionals. You know what it takes to make nationals. You know what it takes to make finals. It's crazy. All divisions, by the way, Division I, Division II, Division III. It's nutso. And obviously, look at what just happened to World Champs with the 400 hurdles and 800. It's crazy what the kids are doing today, right? But I think because of the coaching education that you and I kind of grew up in through the late 90s and through 2010, 2015, I think kids are being coached better today by better educated coaches. And those kids are the future coaches. So when they get into coaching and they fall back to how they were coached, well, it's going to be at a much higher level than guys like me and you were. You know, we had guys that were like either, you know, I loved my head high school coach. He was a thrower from the greatest university in the world, Troy State University, but he didn't know what he was doing distance or on the track. And so we didn't do it. I mean, we literally did our events every day and went home. That's literally what we did for practice every day. I mean, the first event was 4x8. We ran a 4x8. Then the guys went and did the 100.
That was practice
every day, Joel. I'm not.
That's pretty event specific. It's almost a little too specific.
It's a great way of thinking about it. So yeah, we ran the meet. And that's how I got into hurdles, because I was running, when I first started, I was doing 4x8, 8 mile, 2 mile, 4x4 every day in the order of the meet, right? The only rest I got was, you know, if they were lining up for the 100 or the 110 hurdles or whatever, right? So I kept watching. You know, one day I got a little smart. I was like, wait a minute, the sprinters, that dude just ran 100, a 200, a 4x1. They didn't even do the 4x4. It was all the 800 meter guys that did that. And I was like, that's all they did. I wonder if I could trade my 2 mile for the hurdles. So I told coach, can I try out for the hurdles? And luckily, I'm so glad he did. I mean, beyond terrible, but so he was a good, decent throws coach though. And so I love him to death, but I also have a lot of empathy for those guys and gals too. Cause this was in Alabama where every coach was the football coach. So my head track coach was our defensive line coach, and tennis coach was the offensive line coach, all this stuff. And he also taught. And it's like, I don't know that he had time to really think about other things to try to get better at track. He was just trying to do his best, honestly. And I have all the respect and empathy for him for that. While I certainly wish he would have did like you, went and got Track and Field News and Omnibook and try to get better. It's like, man, that dude had a family. I get it, coach. I get where you were, man. So I have a lot of empathy for that, for that type of situation there. So, okay, we're at 11-ish years as the assistant coach. You're doing level ones. Any aha moments in regards to coaching? And what I mean by that is you seem to be a fairly well-rounded coach here, but any event specific group that you started kind of leaning like, oh, I want to learn more about this event or these types of events, or do you still kind of kept that generalist attitude, which is a good attitude?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up having probably more success with sprinters, hurdlers, and jumpers. I work with throwers on occasion. Um, as far as an aha moment, excuse me, part of this is probably dictated by just how fortunate I was when I got to Watauga High School that I had two unbelievably talented. Actually, we have some really good, some very talented people. But I just thought, wow, this all you have to do, this track stuff's pretty easy. And I didn't actually think this, but I was, as a kind of a joke, like, all you got to do is get really talented people and just tell them to run fast. And then you come to realize, everybody that comes to your program isn't going to be like that. You were just lucky enough that when you started coaching, they were freshmen, and you're very, very fortunate. Like I said, it was more than two, but the Taylor twins in particular were extremely talented. And
tell us more about them.
So Lindsay ended up being ranked number 4 in 97 by track and field news. She had a 5'11.5" high jump. Oh. And Gary Murphy, who was the longtime App State high jump coach, he was her primary coach. I worked with her more weight room, hurdles, at meets, because Gary wasn't necessarily there. He was her primary high jump coach. And then Brenda ended up being a really successful hurdler in high school, and then at Harvard, and then NCAA, and then made it to the Olympics 2000. She was working with a coach in California, Ron Sheffield, I think his name.
Oh, yeah, Ron's.
You know him? Yeah, I don't know. I've never met him, but that's who she was working with during her Olympic year, because she is living in California at the time.
Yeah, Ron is one of those guys. I remember being one of the first guys that I would read all of his articles. I mean, he was a big, I call him hurdle guru. You know, that was his thing. Still is. I mean, he's amazing. Last he was at was UC San Diego, I believe, is the last place he was at. But yeah, Ron. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. What was her name again? She went to Harvard.
Brenda Taylor. So Brenda was the the captain of the Harvard track, our co-captain. Lindsay, her twin sister, was the captain of Brown track and field. Twin sister, identical twins.
Wow.
They're really talented, really smart, extremely hard workers. I mean, it's kind of hard to find sometimes your hardest worker is also your most talented people, or at least there's other hard workers. I don't want to undersell what other people did, but sometimes the more talented people aren't necessarily the hardest workers, because they've been able to get by on talent. That wasn't them though. They were very much, very much about getting the most out of themselves they could.
So that was your, like, as you got into high school, those were your athletes. So you're like, oh, this is, to your point, this is easy. Holy crap. These guys are awesome. They're all going to be awesome from now on this, right?
And Watauga, you have Appalachian State there, but it's generally a rural high school. It's a 4A high school, which is the largest in North Carolina, but it was about 1,600 students. So we were on the small end of the biggest class. But we ended up winning 3 straight girls championships, and we won an indoor championship in 97 too. So that in 97 they won the indoor and the outdoor. And but yeah, extremely talented. I look back, and I'm sure you probably did this as well. Things that I did with them, there were some good aspects. I'm not going to completely obliterate what we did, but there's also some things like, wow, what was I thinking? You know how when you write a program, and just the next year you look back, what was I thinking there? And it's probably not that egregious compared to what it could be, or maybe under someone else, like, that's not a big deal, but to you, it's a big deal. Like, I don't know what I was thinking there, but generally I didn't have a lot of those things, but there were still some things. If you had a chance to do it again, you would do it differently a little bit anyway.
I tweeted it out. Someone had quote tweeted. Someone had said something like, do you ever find yourself wanting to apologize to your first group of athletes?
You blew up.
Yeah. And so I quote tweeted, I said, if you don't, are you really coaching? Like, if you don't look back, if you've coached for any number of years, if you don't look back and go, I should really, if I ever see them, I need to say, I'm sorry. Then are you really progressing and learning?
Oh, exactly. It goes back to the whole point of evolution of, are you evolving as a person, as a coach, or are you just like, let me see, what did we do 10 years ago? All right. That's same day as today.
Rinse and repeat.
Here we go. Yeah. Rinse and repeat. Yeah. It's like, I would feel so guilty if I did that with an athlete.
Yeah.
Like, they may not know it's the same workout that was done 10 years ago, but I know.
Right.
I can't let that go.
So keep moving forward here. You become the head coach there at Watauga. How was that experience?
Boy, for indoor track, I was the head coach.
For indoor, yeah. How was that experience compared to an assistant? You know, I know it's small, or it wasn't a small school, but I know it's high school and you're also working on the outside, but there's still responsibilities, and the buck stops here when you get that head title. How was that experience transitioning to that part of coaching?
It was a little bit of course, it's at the high school level, it's not
Mhm.
the collegiate level, so it's a little bit easier transition.
Mhm.
And I had some people helping me as well, some good assistants. But it wasn't that difficult. What I guess some people that are all focused on the coaching aspects, sometimes when you're an assistant coach, you're just coaching. When you get into those roles, oh, I have to do meet entries, I have to find transportation, I have to get
Mhm.
for some meets, I have to arrange for lodging. Now you got a little bit more to handle, and it's not tremendous. Of course, when you get in the collegiate setting, it changes even more. But I feel like that kind of helped me. And here I'm getting a little ahead. Here we have some great coaches that help distribute the load all over.
Mhm.
So we're able to handle that pretty well. Because I was doing all that, it would sort of like defeat the whole purpose of why you got into coaching in the first place. Like I understand administrative roles are going to change as you're moving up, but at the same time, you don't ever want to get away from coaching. That's the
Mhm.
whole reason you got into it in the first place. But it was a challenge, but it wasn't too difficult.
So I coached all of 2 years of high school before my ego said I should be coaching college. As you're rolling through this, is there any thoughts of coaching college coming up,
Yeah,
or?
there was, and actually, Meg Ritchie Stone,
Oh
Dr.
yeah.
Stone's wife, she said, I'm trying to think what year this was. This is probably around 97, 98. I went and watched one of App State's practices, and I got to know Meg pretty well. She moved to Boone in '94 after she and Doc got married, and she said you should be coaching in a collegiate setting. And I had thought about it a little bit, but when she said that, I thought maybe I don't want to. I can respect collegiate coaches, but I don't want to put them on such a pedestal that I'm thinking I don't belong in that group. So
Yeah.
why not? Why not me? Um, Particularly when you're going to come across some people that are doing the same things they did as athletes 20 years ago,
Mhm.
and they probably do it very well, and they probably coach you very well. But my plan is to evolve. I'm not going to be doing the same thing now that I was doing a year or two ago. Just like same way you approached it.
So why not me? Did you, when you started kind of that, when Meg said that, which I love that, because again, that just like, I don't know that people realize that when they speak something positive to people,
How
they think
important that can be.
yeah, how impactful. Sometimes we go, oh, I just, it's no big deal. He was going to do it anyway. It's like, no, those are part of, that's kind of kindling. A lot of people maybe had to speak into you to do that, but if they don't, then that fire never gets going. So I just think, props to Meg, and what a genius, by the way, the Stone couple,
Yes,
get out of here. I mean,
I
I don't know that we know them today, like when in the late 90s and 2000s when they were writing a ton and speaking a ton. It was like, man, these people know a lot. I don't know that we're still reading those things necessarily today, which we should be. They did amazing
They
research.
just put out a book recently,
Oh,
actually,
did they?
Dr. Stone
Okay,
did.
good,
Yes,
good, perfect, good. They should. They have the knowledge. We need it out there in the world.
absolutely.
So I love that Meg just was like, hey, you know what? Have you ever considered that? You should be coaching that. And I was like, okay. So as that starts kind of flipping for you, like, okay, yeah, why not me? Did you start paying attention to college coaches? You're in an area where there were a lot of college coaching opportunities for you to
Right.
see. Did you start kind of watching how they do things and what they do things, and maybe started talking to them and asking questions, or did you keep moving forward in the high school coaching setting?
Well, there's a friend here at UNC-Asheville, Brad DeWeese, who's now the performance director for the New York Jets.
Yeah, I'd say
Very good friend of
another
mine.
super smart dude. Yeah.
Yes, he was with the bobsled and
Uh-huh.
skeleton at
Uh-huh.
Lake Placid, and we've even had some former student athletes that were assisting him up there for a while. And then, like I said, he was at ETSU with Dr. Stone
Mm.
up until I guess a year and a half ago. And Brad had been trying to get me into the collegiate setting, and a guy named Jesse Norman that he had actually been at Western Carolina with
Yeah.
became our head coach here, and he kept pushing. When in 2007, when the job came open, Brad kept pushing my name, said, "You need to hire this guy. You need to hire this guy." And like I said, Brad and I go back to, I think it was 2000 or 2001. A former athlete of mine at Watauga came here to Asheville. And he said Patrick Hall was his name. He's the one that actually kind of connected. So because there's a coach that my high school coach, I think you and Brad, I think you guys should meet each other. You should, I guess he noted some similarities, or I'm not sure exactly why, but I think he saw that maybe kindred spirits, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Brad's a good friend, and I've never been a New York Jets fan. I don't hate the Jets, but now I pull for them because not only is Brad there, but Omar Ahmad is a former jumper for us and our former head strength coach here. Up until 2016, he's an assistant with the Jets. So obviously I want the Jets to be successful because in that industry, it's not for long. NFL. So I'm always hoping for them to be successful as a program because they're great coaches. They're absolute outstanding coaches.
That's really cool. So you parlay Watauga into, did you say the assistant job at Asheville?
Yes.
Okay. So what was that like? I mean, I don't want to broad stroke and say we all as high school coaches want to be college coaches. Certainly not everybody does. I will note that when I taught level ones, and I did about 30 before I retired and stopped doing that. One of the most common questions I had from high school coaches was, how do I coach? How do I become a college coach? And my answer typically was, maybe you don't. You might be in a really sweet situation that you don't realize what's on the other side. What was that transition like going to Asheville? And where are we in the 20-year program for the degree? Because we get it somewhere.
Oh, 2004. Yeah, got it then. And then I coached at Watauga one more year, moved into one of those Velocity Sports Performance, I guess. Hopefully that's not a
no,
that was
okay.
Good. But worked for them for a while down in Greensboro, and then was looking to get back into the field in 2007. The job came open.
Yeah.
Interviewed, and I think I started October 9th, 2007. So I've been here. This is the start of my 16th year.
Wow. I wondered where the degree came in because that's sometimes a showstopper to coach college. Not always, but a lot of times you have to have that degree. So that's why I wondered where did that go in?
Oh yeah.
How hard was that? Let's take a step back there. How hard was that to go back and get your degree? You'd been off of school for a while. How I mean, just mentally and workload wise, how was that to do that?
I mean, it would, like you always hear from anybody, hey, you're going to have to make some changes. You're going to have to make some sacrifices to make this work. I just had a year and a half of school left because I had a lot of hours, but I had to get a lot of hours dropped because they weren't towards what I ended up going back to health promotions with health and wellness, and got a minor in exercise science, which is my original major intention.
Right.
So I ended up some of those classes didn't necessarily work for the others. So I ended up having a year and a half to go to complete that. But it wasn't that difficult. It was just a matter of just knowing, hey, you just got to get through 3 semesters. So 3 semesters and you're done. And then you have your degree. And then maybe some openings, some opportunities will emerge from having finally completed that thing.
Right. Well, bravo to you. I'm not necessarily the biggest college guy. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily, especially in today's world. As I look at my almost 12-year-old and 9-year-old, I'm like, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe, but maybe not. So I'm not necessarily the biggest college guy, but bravo to you for going back, sticking to it. I think you might have oversimplified it a little bit because, again, your life is different going into classes versus everything else. So you had to make some sacrifices with the work and probably missed a practice or two for whatever reasons, here and there. But just, to be able to kind of have that stick to itness and say, you know what, I know I'm so close. Let me finish it out. I wanted to make sure where and how that was, because there's other people right now that are a semester away, two years away, and they're like, I just can't do it. It's impossible.
Just finish it out.
Yeah. I think that's important. Yeah. Thanks
you hear a lot of actors and musicians, some big opportunity opens up, and granted, for their financial situation, they didn't necessarily need to get their degree because some acting opportunity or whatever. And maybe they don't need it. But for most of us, we're going to rely on at least having proven that we can get through 4 years or 20 and complete being coachable, trainable, teachable, all those kind
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah,
And
like I said, that was important. Bravo for doing that. Okay, so you're a college coach. You're the assistant at UNC-Asheville. What smacked you up the head? What were you like? Oh my, I did not realize as a college coach I was going to have to deal with or do X, Y, and Z. What was just like you just didn't see it coming. You just had to have the experience happen to you.
One of the things was, and as much as I even love the strength training, the strength power development, and some people, I talk about it so much. Some people think you're not a track coach, you're a strength coach disguised as a track coach, and I just feel like I'm both of those things, and I feel like taking that seriously has made it an important part and successful part of what we do. But the amount of, because at the time we didn't have a full, like Brad was a part-time strength coach. He was a head coach, but we only had a part-time head strength coach at a Division I school. And the amount of hours you'd have to spend in the weight room beyond, so it wasn't like I'm out on the track, athletes go in, work with the strength coach. Like, no, you are the strength coach, so you're going to do everything. So the amount of hours you would spend, and we still spend lots of hours doing things on an average daily basis, but it's not as extensive as it used to be, where you had to be, you're going to start early, you're going to finish late every day, because this athlete needs supervision and you want them to have that supervision, but there was no one else to do it.
Right.
So you're going to have to, smaller programs, you're obviously going to be sort of a jack of all trades, or it's not going to get done. And you're like, do I want to go without it? No, it's important, but I know it needs to get done. So you're the one to do it.
Well, so the reverse of that question is, what did you step into in the college coaching for track and field that was like, man, it's like riding a bike. You've been doing it forever. It was easier than you even thought it was going to be.
I'd say you don't have as many outside, like obviously the education part is the priority, but you don't have as many outside drains on their energy. They may be part of some club. They have this, like, it's a very good school here, highly demanding academically. But other than that, and that's demanding, that's a challenge on its own. But there's not, well, the substance, like one of the things I've seen with high school, and I know this exists in a number of high schools, is coaches pulling on athletes from other sports when they're in their season. Like a sport says, hey, I need this athlete. It's like, no, we're in season. I think coach, and most do, but there are coaches that maybe don't respect a student athlete being in a sport and then, like, letting them finish their season out before, like, for example, as a high school coach, I wouldn't say, hey, soccer coach or hey, volleyball coach, I need your athletes. I know you got a playoff game coming up tonight. No.
Right.
And, you have to respect not only the student athlete and what they've committed to, but also the other program. And sometimes that gets lost at the high school level. College, that's not an issue. They're fully committed to being there every day. And not to say we didn't have great high school athletes that were committed. We did, but there's just not as many different strains or pulls on them.
Yeah, high school, that you got prom, yearbook committee, part-time work, theater. Yeah. There's so many things where it's like, oh, when you're in college, especially as a college athlete, you're pretty much sports and academics, and maybe you have a part-time job or something. Yeah,
right.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So as you go through your first and second year there into college coaching, was there anything that you looked back at the high school, because you coached high school for quite a while and had a great high school career there as a coach? Was there anything you're like, oh man, maybe I should go back to high school? Or did you fall in love, glom onto the collegiate side of the coaching?
I think the idea that you could actually be a professional coach and you're not making a small high school supplement, this is your profession.
All right.
I think that's like, okay, I should have been doing this earlier.
Yeah. So what was it like? Oh man, what did I spend so long for? What did I get over
and
here?
I tried from around 2005 till 2007. I definitely sent out resumes, but I feel like in America, some of our very best coaches are, and not to say there's not great collegiate coaches, I'm not saying that at all. Some of our very best coaches have been in the high school ranks, have been in the club. Say Tony Wells, who I considered a major influence.
Yeah.
I got to meet him in '97.
Oh, did you really?
Club coach, And but I mean, I don't know how much more successful you could be as a club coach over shot put, jumps, obviously sprints, hurdles. Outstanding coach, and
Yeah.
like I said, I'd consider him a big influence.
Oh man, yeah, that's I don't like to have regrets, but that's a regret of like I never got to meet Tony. I saw plenty of his videos and have gotten to
I've
know
just, yep,
one of his
those are great.
yeah, I've gotten to know real well one of his proteges, Carol Smith Gilbert, now head
Hmm.
coach at University of Georgia. And it's funny, I had dinner with Brian Kula out in Denver.
Colorado.
Yeah, and Brian's another Gill podcast alum. And he got to know Tony because he was at, next door basically, and he was just sharing stories, and it was like, oh man, I missed out. I missed out not meeting a guy like Tony Wells, man. What an influence that there are coaches out there that are doing Tony stuff that have no clue that it's Tony stuff.
Right. And you're hard pressed to go out and find a lot of materials about him
Right.
online. You
Right.
can't find the stuff, and somebody should put out a book of his art, like
Yeah.
of his articles, of some of his works, put his videos out there. I
Yeah.
think Kaba Tolbert has put out some of his stuff in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
presentation he gave, and I actually
Mhm.
was present for that online presentation. That was good with him and Curtis Taylor, I think it was.
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah.
Um, but that was impressive. And then uh, yeah, Tony was amazing. And there was another really good high school coach here from North Carolina named Robert Steele that was the longtime coach of North Oran High
North
School.
Rowan. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh my
Uh-huh.
gosh. They were a 2A high school producing, I think their all-time top 5 list is like 50-foot triple jumpers.
That's where Greg
Greg
Udell.
Liddell.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah. 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 I do
And
remember.
great outstanding hurdlers,
Yeah.
throwers, sprinters, um, just amazing. A small school just dominate the 2A, and some of their performances were as good as the 3A, 4A teams in the same year. So
Yeah.
Robert Steele I think he's retired, but he was an outstanding North Carolina coach.
Yeah, I'm not sure the state of North Carolina gets its due in regards to high school track and field. I mean, of course, we talk about the Texas, Florida, California, right? Just because of the volume of people and performances that come out of there. Right here in the Midwest, we get a lot of cred, rightfully so. Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio produce amazing, but North Carolina, it's not that populous, right? There's a lot of woods in North Carolina. It's a beautiful state, but boy, it produces. My number one state is New Jersey, by the way. That's my per capita. Like,
Well,
you can't beat New Jersey, but North
between
Carolina,
Mo and Wilson and Sydney and
that's just recently. You can go back a
yeah,
long. Don't remember Carl was from New Jersey as well.
Willingboro,
Yeah. It was always my recruiting state.
Alabama, though, right? Originally,
Original. Yeah.
but he
Right.
grew up in Willingboro, I
Yeah,
think, right?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, you know your history. Okay, so how long were you the assistant before you became the head, and how long into being assistant did you think I might want to be a head coach as well one day?
Coach Williamson left here, and we only worked together 9 months. But Coach Williamson Danny Williamson's outstanding coach. Not only just being a great coach,
Danny was at
for
Asheville.
just for the COVID year, and then he retired
Oh, right.
the summer after COVID hit.
That's right.
I guess
Okay.
he just figured this is a good time to get out. But we were with him one year. Adam Pewitt, who's the other assistant coach at the time, he was an athlete and a GA under Danny. And Danny, besides being just a great coach, just outstanding leader. I could see
great
why
person.
he was. Yeah, I could see pretty quickly why he was so successful. It wasn't just his coaching. Yes, that was a big part of it, but it was also his leadership, and that's something I'm. That's just not the kind of head coach I am. He just was such a good leader. Like I said, I'm a little bit different in that respect because you have to just be yourself. But I respect completely how he is as a leader. And like I said, I could see this is why this guy's had so much success over so many years, and doing it over the years with budgets that maybe scholarship budgets and operating budgets that maybe weren't that. And I'm not talking about here, I'm talking about prior to here, that maybe he was getting, not maybe, but he was getting the most out of what they had available as resources. And people would develop from a very modest levels to Olympians like Manio.
Right.
So, and he had other Olympians. I think he had one or two other Olympians at least in his time. So he was outstanding. but that's in fall of 2020 is when Adam and he became the head coach for cross, and I became the head coach for track, and we're the associate for the other each. Um, and as far as when it dawned on me that I could be a head coach, or I was kind of content when he came in to continue to just be an assistant coach, and I think it was good that we had people that both of us had a lot of experience. Of course, it could be bad experience, but I felt like it was good, productive experience. It was going to be beneficial to those people that we were coaching. But I had never, until it just kind of presented itself, I didn't really give it my shot. I figured I would kind of sail out as an assistant coach, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. That's right. That's important to hear. That is okay. That there is nothing wrong with that. In fact, there are a number of assistant coaches that become head coaches because that's quote unquote what you're supposed to do, and they're not very good head coaches. And that's not because they're not talented. That's just not their wheelhouse, not their God-given talent. And they are rock star assistant coaches, which makes the program better. And as head coaches, they're not. That's just not their wheelhouse. So
that's right.
So it's not that. That's completely right. You do not have to become a head coach. In fact, there are a lot less head coaching positions than there are assistant coach positions. So not everybody is going to be that head coach. Now, I do. Go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, and you're right. It's maybe not in their wheelhouse. Maybe not to really their strengths. The other thing you got to think about, if someone was a good assistant coach, they moved to a head coach, who's going to, do you have someone equally as good to replace your role when you move over? So it's a matter of like, are you as effective in this other job as you had hoped? But who's going to take on your role when you move out of that, or not your role, but somebody's role?
Right. No, that's exactly right. Because the answer typically is, I'll just do it. I'll do that and the head coaching role. And it's like, oh, okay, that's why you're not going to be very good. That's why you're not going to succeed as much as maybe you could and should do. Yeah, exactly. Great point. Now, I do. I'm a little. I like to be. it's my show, right? I'm the host, so I get to challenge people, Joel. So I'd like to challenge you, with your permission, on something you said. Now, what I'm going to use my words. You correct me where I misunderstood. You talked about Danny and his leadership, and you are spot on. No challenge there. Okay. And you said, yeah, that's not me. I'm not that type of leader. I think that's verbatim what you said.
Yeah, that's correct.
Tell me then, how would you self-describe your leadership style then? If you're not a Denny Williamson, and I'm not saying you have to be a Denny Williamson, that's a pretty high bar, but I have to know, just from the hour and 20 we've been together so far today, knowing, I know Asheville track and field, so it ain't like you just live in no man's land. You're not doing a good job. You're doing a great job as the leader of the program. You are a leader. You are a good leader. So tell me how you would describe, if you kind of put yourself down a little bit there. That's why I'm challenging here. Tell me
I'd say it's more like leadership style differences. I'm not as much, and this is not to say he was over the top on this, because I always felt like he was fair. I'm just not as much of an in your face kind of coach, and challenging people maybe as often. Like I said, his was completely appropriate, and I never saw a time where I thought he's being unfair, but that's not really my style. I'm more of like, I'm going to talk to you about something, but I want you to kind of figure it out. And I'm not going to try to force this issue. Like I said, not that he did. I don't mean to say that.
Yeah. And don't hear that. I'm not trying to put a comparison here. Please. Yeah. Hear me not do that. I'm more just the question of, then how do you self-describe your leadership? Let's focus on that, not the comparison, just how you describe your leadership.
It's a little bit more just like from a teaching perspective, more, I just want to have like conversation with somebody on the side about things they need to do differently, things they need to improve on. And it's usually not going to be as in front of people. Like I said, anytime if somebody got called out, it was appropriate, but that's just, I've gotten mad. It's definitely not a case where I've never gotten mad and outwardly, but it doesn't generally happen. If I get mad, it's going to be pretty rare, I guess you would say, outwardly, where I'm going to be yelling at a group of people, because I always feel like, at least from my perspective, and like I said, this has nothing to do with him, because like I said,
that's right, no comparison here. I'm not comparing.
Right. If I feel like if I have to do that to a whole group, then that's probably my fault, because that means too many people here aren't getting it, and that means that's a communication issue, and that's probably on me.
Right.
Like I said, he was really smooth about, like, he knew the right thing to say, when to say it. I never felt like he was unfair, and I was only with him 9 months, so it's not like I had
Right.
this
Right.
expansive 5-year or 10-year coaching career. But he was a professional, tough coach, but a fair coach.
Yeah.
I'm just probably a little bit more subdued, and there's probably times where I need to be a little bit more of that, like
Mm.
that. There are probably
Hmm.
times where there would be some value into that, and
Hmm.
I do, but it's probably sometimes just throwing a clipboard down. Like, what warm up are you guys doing? Like, we're doing such and such. No, no, you're not. Uh, that's not the warm up. Just stuff like that. And I don't have to do it that often because they're good, smart, and they're coachable. So, but every now and then, probably it would do me well. Maybe like a strategic blow up every now and then, a little bit
A
more often.
strategic blow. I like that. Today we're scheduling a blow up because
Well,
we need it.
let's see what's on my schedule. Thursday,
Right.
blow up.
Blow
Oh,
up.
I need to get out there right now. Yeah.
Well, I like that because, I think you're spot on. Again, the intent there for that question was not to compare you to a Danny Williamson. First of all, because comparison of any two coaches is just unfair. Also, that you were with Danny for 9 months, for crying out loud.
Right.
It's barely long enough to have a baby. So no comparison there. It's more about that your style, how you want to be your style, I love that you took it a great next step of you having a lot of self-awareness of like, maybe I need to be a little bit more that way in certain spots strategically.
Yes. Yeah.
Because what I love that is there are so many different styles of people who are coaches, right? Like I'm thinking of, you have to know a very good friend of mine, Jim Sprecher,
Oh
over
yeah.
at Lynchburg,
Very
right?
well. Yes.
Also a Gill podcast alum. I worked with Spreck at Ball
Great,
State.
great guy.
Yeah,
Great guy.
great guy, right? So think about his style compared to a Mouse Holloway, compared to my old boss at Ball State, Sue Parks. 3 different people that have had mucho success, like lots of success. And what I love about everybody having a different leadership and personality style is there are 18-year-old kids or high school kids that need to be with someone like you and not with someone like a Mouse. They're not going to thrive under him versus you. That need to be with you, not a Carol Smith Gilbert. They're going to thrive under you, because the reverse is true. There are people that
Yeah.
they don't need to be at Asheville program with you because they need to be with a
That's
Carol at Georgia, a
absolutely
Sprecher at Lynchburg, etc. So no, that's where I
right.
was trying to get to, is like, well, what is your leadership style? So I love that. That's really cool. How many years have you been at Asheville now?
This is the start of I'm just started my 16th year.
Oh man, boy, time goes by. That's amazing. I love that. Think about, I love busting myths. One of the myths that we have out there. So I love that you had this great and lengthy high school career, and now you're in the midst of this great lengthy collegiate career. Because one of the myths, and I love doing this because to me, it's just, and maybe you believe this myth, and so you're going to bust me. That's open. We're good for that. We're good for that. You're allowed to challenge back now that I've challenged you, Joel. But there's this myth out there that high school coaches can't coach in the collegiate level, mainly for one reason: they can't recruit.
Yeah.
It's not usually coaching. It's usually like, well, boy, I wouldn't even talk to them if they didn't have success with kids.
You're
but
right.
Recruiting. How did you overcome this? I'm being sarcastic here. This unbelievably unimaginable hurdle here, Joel.
I agree with you, because my argument against that belief is, before even a collegiate coach recruited, he wasn't a recruiter. So he started somewhere too.
Oh, wow.
It's just because, I mean, and I will say this too, like, high school coaches recruit the hallways. And we know there's some high schools that recruit across town and make some of their competitors mad. I guess you can do that at some schools, but most school districts, I guess, would frown upon that. But they do recruit. They just recruit in different ways. But that's something I like to go back to. Before you did something, or before you had done something, you had never done that thing. So you started somewhere. So why couldn't a coach at the high school level learn to recruit? I don't think that's true at all.
I love asking that question, specifically of high school coaches that have gone on to college. And I tell you, every high school coach, I'm talking about every high school coach that we've had on the podcast. And we've had now for the past 2 years, we've had the 4 national high school coaches of the year through USTFCA. So high level, I mean, we're talking about some high level coaches. We had a high school coach from Kentucky that runs a track meet at his school and has no track. So he invites schools over and they do the one lap around the parking lot. They do the softball throw in the softball field. He dug out a long jump pit and they use the sidewalk, like, no excuses type of person, right? So everybody from that guy has no track and has meets up to the National High School Coaches of the Year, and their success is almost the same as a college coach. It is predicated on the athletes that they go out and get. Certainly there are a number of kids that come out, but they all talk about you hit the nail on the head. They all recruit the hallway. They're always looking like, hey man, so you got cut from baseball? You want to come over here? Or, hey, I know you play soccer in the fall. I saw you're pretty fast. You want to come try track?
Right.
And that's their success rate is dependent on that. So when people tell me, yeah, I can't hire a high school coach because they can't recruit, it's like, wait a minute. I felt like I was recruiting was one of my top things, one of my top skills when I was coaching college. And as much as I was really good at it, it wasn't rocket science. But what I mean by that, it wasn't some kind of specialized knowledge base.
Right.
It was more
Just
personality.
Knowing your school, knowing
Yeah.
your product, knowing your team.
Yes. And personality maybe a little bit with it, right? But it's like, you don't lose that because you become a high school coach and teacher. In fact, like I said, the coaches we've had on the podcast, it's like, it might be harder. They don't get to bring anybody on an official visit in high school and wine and dine them and all that kind of stuff. They don't get to get them pictures in their uniforms and all that kind of stuff. So I love that the career you had high school and now into college. Did you find anything to struggle with recruiting, or was it just like, oh yeah, I just get to sell a different product in a different way now that I'm a college coach?
And I think when you believe in your product, it makes recruiting a lot easier. And then because you sort of describe the product, the education, etc., and in a way that you believe. And I think that comes through to people.
Or it doesn't.
Or doesn't. Yeah.
Right.
And I meant in our situation, because I do believe in our education. But yeah, in general, if you're talking about all programs, if you don't really believe in it, or if you don't think it's important, you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And if education is important to you as a student athlete, and the coach isn't stressing that at all, it never comes up.
Right.
And it maybe even they ask a question and the coach changes the subject, you might want to think twice about, is that for you? So,
I mean, these kids, these 18-year-olds, 17, 18-year-olds, they're smart kids. You're not going to pull much over them in today's world. You faking the funk, man. There's that little BS detector, little BS meter kind of goes up and they're like, wait a minute, man. They got to where they are because they're smart people, smart book smart and smart street smart. So I hesitate that any coach is going to pull the hood over some kid today, man. I'll tell you. So good.
I was going to say, and just because a high school coach hasn't recruited in the format of a college program, why does that mean they can't do it? We put people in different events when they get here.
Man,
we challenge them to different events. Like, hey, you're a long jumper and a sprinter. All right, I'm going to make you a multi because maybe you have some abilities in some other areas. So why would a person not be able to adapt to a different recruiting route? Yeah, there may be a little transition, but why can't they do it just because they haven't done it?
Joel, I've heard many people answer that question from me, and you have put it better than I have ever heard. Like you knocked it right out in your very first sentence when you said every college coach was a non-recruiter at one time. And I was like, oh my gosh, even if they were an athlete, okay, you didn't recruit. I know you're part of maybe the recruiting process and whatever, but you were a non-recruiter at some point too. And here we have a coach who has experience coaching. And whatever you want to say about non-recruiting, again, they are recruiting the hallways, but they're going to be in the same spot. Like, come on, you learned it. Again, it's not secret sauce here. Wow. Yeah, that's so succinct, man. I love that. Thank you for sharing those thoughts.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate that. So let's talk about today at UNC-Asheville. Gorgeous, by the way, the location. I mean, North Carolina is I don't know, man. It's a pretty interesting place as far as beauty. It's a great state there. Talk to us about, we don't do anything without a staff. You mentioned the head cross country coach. Talk to us about your staff there and what you got going on for coaches.
JP Kimbrough is our jumps coach. He helps me with sprints, especially right now. We're kind of our strength coach is out on paternity leave, so I'm the only one that currently has a strength coach certification. So I'm the only one that really can be in there with our athletes. So right now he's handling the jumps and the sprints, hurdles. There's one group I can go with because there's no weight training group at that time. But JP was a jumper and a football player. I think he played safety for Duke.
Oh, wow.
And he's from Hendersonville, which is just south of us, about 20 minutes south of us. Kim Cannon was a thrower for Western Carolina. She's also from Asheville area. She went to TC Robertson High School just south of us, in Arden, just about 20 minutes from us. And then actually, so two of our coaches are from Western, Adam and Kim, and then JP from Duke. But Adam's actually originally from Huntsville, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So the Alabama connection for you.
Yeah, always. That's the best people down in Alabama. Let me tell you, that's awesome. I love that. It's interesting. The family of North Carolina schools. I know you mentioned Adam from Huntsville, but those other people went to Western, and they're all kind of North Carolina people.
Yeah, and myself.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So yeah, we're all. I guess three of us are. I'm a South Carolina native. They're North Carolina natives, as far as I know. But they're outstanding development. Like we'll get kids that maybe aren't. We see some potential in them, but all these coaches are so good with development. And that's the thing I really appreciate about all of them. They don't just require on ready-made talent. Would we like more ready-made talent to come in? Sure. Although that can kind of come with its own issues. For example, if they've had a coach who's sort of kitchen sinked them in high school, do every single thing they could at them, and there's not that much more room for development, then it becomes a real challenge for the coach. Like, how am I going to improve this person? But this staff is just so good on development. They can see something in somebody and they know all the right steps. Sure, there's mistakes along the way. We all do it, but they're so good with development. And we got people that come in and they far exceed the levels that they were achieving before they got here.
Well, I have a lot of respect for college coaches in the state of North Carolina because, remember, it's not that populous of a state compared to even Illinois. There's way more people in Illinois than in North Carolina. But there are a gob ton of colleges that have track programs in the state of North Carolina. Oh, my Lord. There are so many opportunities for in-state school or in-state kids, and then, of course, out-of-state kids. So you've got to be, if you coaching in North Carolina in a college, you got to hustle because you have competition every single kid.
Absolutely. In fact, it's more challenging for us to recruit in-state than it is out-of-state. And of course, you could say, well, that's also 49 states you can recruit from versus one. Although you would think the one you're in, it would be easier. Not necessarily, especially if you're trying to get them from this area. Because, if you've grown up in an area, a lot of times it's difficult to keep that person. They want to move on to something else. Somebody from the beach might be more interested, like, hey, I want to live in the mountains now. But it's a challenge because unless I've got the number incorrect, there's 17 member schools in the UNC system. So it's a lot of schools to compete against each other. Where we come out, sometimes we get some recruiting interest because if you look up University of North Carolina, either Chapel Hill will come up or we will, because alphabetically we're first.
Alphabetically.
But I tell you what, I never rely on that. If somebody thinks that we're, are you guys the Tar Heels? No, we're not. In fact, I guess there was an athlete before I even got here who I think he was from Germany. I believe he was a decathlete.
Oh, no.
I heard he asked the head coach at the time, so where's the Dean Dome? And the guy said, about 3.5 hours that way.
Oh, no. Oh, man. Kids.
Yeah. I mean, they're from out of state, so I understand University of North Carolina, whether it's us or one other campus, may not have that. If they're from the South, they probably know. If they're from the Midwest or the West, they may not. They just know University of North Carolina.
Absolutely.
That's one school, right? No, that's one of many campuses.
Right.
App is also a member of that system.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's amazing, man. That's a great story. Well, Joel, to wrap us up here today, talk to us about what's got you excited about your program. You guys are doing some good things there, and what's coming up this year or next couple of years that you kind of foresee that's got you pumped up to be there at UNC-Asheville.
We have a new facility being constructed currently. It's inconvenient for this year right now, but it's inconvenience for it will serve us well going forward. So we're
Mhm.
looking forward to that. It should be completed by the end of March. So we'll at least be able to get on there about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on people making it to NCAA prelims
Yeah,
and all that sort of thing.
this year.
It's going on right now.
Wow, that's
It
exciting. That is exciting. Holy
started
cow.
about 3 weeks ago, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be a far better facility than anything we've had since I've been here.
Now
It- it's-
in North Carolina, every track is Irwin Belk track. Are you an Irwin Belk track or no?
no, and there's a story behind that I don't want to get into too much, but
Sure.
uh, he apparently offered to buy us a track years ago. The story goes, and somebody turned him down. I think it was many years before I got here. That's the story I heard. But somebody recently confirmed that there's actually, I don't know if all the details I had were correct, but generally, yes, that is the case.
Yeah, they're all
Like,
Belk tracks. Like I had no clue. I'm not from North Carolina, so I didn't know there was Belk stores. And then first couple of times
right.
I'd go in for meets or whatever, I'm like, oh my, they are all Irwin Belk. Like, and thank God, love you, Irwin Belk. By the way, we need more people like that in the sport of
Oh,
track and field. Thank
he
you,
was,
sir.
I think he was of course, back then they're running the 880 in the 50s.
Right.
They weren't running the 800, but I think he was a half miler for UNC Chapel Hill back in the 50s, probably around the
Wow.
time Jim Beatty was there, maybe a little bit before him. But he also has done a lot for what we would typically refer to as amateur sports in the U.S. So I think there's an Irwin Belk road or avenue at the Colorado Springs Training Center. So he's done a lot for track and field specifically, but other traditionally
Really?
amateur sports in the U.S. And so, yeah, much credit to him. I think he was there in the early to mid 50s, if I'm
Dude,
not mistaken.
we need Elon Musk and oh gosh, who's the Microsoft guy? Bill Gates. We need
It's
Bill Gates tracks. We need Elon Musk track. We need more of that
right.
because that's going to be better for our society. So, like I said, I don't make fun when I say it wasn't an Irwin Belk track because I just all props to him and helping out specifically
Yeah.
North Carolina, but even in Colorado Springs. What else, man? Healthy things grow, man. So really happy for the new facility. I mean, that's a big deal. So that's you could stamp it right there and be done, and that's a huge thing for you guys here.
Yeah. A lot of people that aren't even track coaches or just administrators, people from other schools have talked about, wow, that's really going to help with recruiting. And I was like, you're right. It sure will. Because the facility in the past hasn't been in the best of shape. It goes back to 2010 was the last time it was resurfaced.
Oh wow.
And for a few years, it's been falling off. But this is going to be not just an improvement, it's going to be a complete 180 from what we've been dealing with.
You've got to make sure your media team, your SIDs, one of my favorite videos ever is when they have the camera for the kids when they first come onto the track. Because
Right.
I mean, if you ever want to know what new equipment and new track can do for a kid and their confidence and their joy, find that video. Like Michigan did it when they first opened up their indoor, and the kids come in. And these are Michigan kids, right? So they've had it all. Michigan has every budget in the world, so it's not like they didn't have good things. You just see like kid in the candy store, Christmas Day, like their heart just grows 10 times seeing this amazing facility. So you guys make sure your information SIDs film these kids when they first see it, because it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's like all right, not only am I going to have this really, really nice facility to train on, which is going to cut down on my soft tissue issues. I'm going to be able to train more healthy. I'm going to be able to perform better. I'm going to be able to host meets, which is another major thing we have not had.
Yeah.
They haven't hosted a meet out here, I think, in it's either 17 or 18 years. It actually, I tell our guys, surprisingly, there's a time that predates me here. There was a time before I even got here. They think I've just been here for 80 years. But it's also demonstrative of a commitment from administration and from the school as a whole that, wow, we're being fully supported. In fact, one of the happiest days I saw our guys was not just hearing about the track, but the day they saw them breaking grounds. Like, okay,
it's real.
It's happening.
Yeah,
yes,
it's real.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it's real. Right.
Yeah. You can say it all you want. If they ain't no shovel in the ground, nothing's happening.
It's just
so yeah. That's kind of like when we recruit kids too, right? It's like, okay, look, I know you say you're interested in my school, but until you apply or send me some transcripts, it ain't real.
Right.
You're just talking right now.
you may be just offer shopping somehow.
Right. That's right. Well, man, I'm excited for you guys. Like I said, healthy things grow. So when we hear about
Right.
new facilities or, additional coaching members or additional scholarship numbers for you, that's always a positive. There is
Mhm.
literally no negative that comes from that. So really, really pumped for you guys in your program.
Yeah. And we appreciate our support from our administration. And we've had some big donors step in recently, like in a big way, in a way that's almost historical for UNC Asheville. And all it sometimes takes is, all right, we need this amount. Somebody gets it started, somebody else came after, somebody else has come after this. It's like I need to see somebody else do something, and
Sure.
then when they see it, other people jump in, and
Yeah.
we're getting close to every bit of what we need
Yeah, it's
to
hard being
pay for it.
it's hard being first sometimes. We all
Right.
like to think that we're leaders and we would just jump in, but sometimes we need someone else to jump in. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I can do it too then. So that's
Right.
awesome, man. Wow.
Yep. Very much so. Yeah, we're very excited about that, and our kids are, like I said, very excited. They're excited again about training, competing on that facility, but also the commitment that Janet Cohn, our athletic director, and our administration in general, and again the school as a whole, is saying your school sometimes is judged by not just the quality of your education. Certainly, that's the main factor, but also the quality of your overall facilities.
Mhm.
And that was sort of a sore thumb, and it's not going to be that now.
Man. Joel, man, that is awesome. I love hearing that's a great kind of mic drop at the end of the podcast, man. I love hearing about new facilities for programs because we
Yeah.
deserve it. I mean, it's
Yes.
amazing to me when we talk about coaches when they get contract extensions or pay raises or they get a new job or new facilities. And, sometimes we get a little, I'm not sure what the right word is here, but we get a little bit like, oh, we're just track,
Right.
it'd be nice, but we don't need it. And it's like, man, you deserve it. You touch so many more athletes than a lot of
Right.
other sports. And this isn't a comparison thing. I want your tennis facility to be amazing. I want your baseball facility to be amazing. But for track, we have sometimes a too humbleness to us. We need to
Right.
know that we're six sports. We touch a lot of
Yes.
athletes. We're important. The sport of track and fields is important as a base to every other sport out there. So when programs like yourself get something that I think you deserve, which is all of it, it just makes us so happy here, man. That's just so awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, I love to hear about it when I hear, and it has nothing to do with me, but when
Mhm.
I hear about some really successful coach in our sport getting some massive contract, or
Yes.
some, or Marshall adding their men's program.
Yes.
Not been in how many programs are adding men's track? When's the last time that happened?
You
You just see
know,
it go away.
we've had a few. It's funny. That is one of my favorite things to post on our LinkedIn account for Gill Athletics because I always like, hey, when one wins, we all win. When one celebrates, we all celebrate. So like
Yes.
Marshall was the last one I did, but we've had a couple of programs that have added here lately. Those don't get as much pub as the ones that drop, maybe for obvious reasons. I don't know. I think anytime someone drops, we need to bring the hammer down. Russell Dinkins, shout out to you, man. Another Gill podcast alum who really fights hard for advocacy for track and field, specifically as a minority representation on college
Right.
campuses. But so maybe I'm glad those get pub because they need it because they need to be hammered for making the wrong decisions.
Yeah. Yes.
But we've had a few, and you're right. I love that you brought up Marshall because what a program, what a school. Thank goodness that they are bringing back men's track and field. As soon as they did, I tagged RAD at Troy, my alma mater, and said, "Hey, can we add men's? We don't have indoor there." I was like, "Can we add men's indoor now?" Because Marshall's now in the same conference as Troy.
Right.
So I was like, "Hey, see, they can do it. Like, we're supposed to be the
App.
biggest,
App lost
baddest
their
up there."
indoor program.
App,
They're
yes,
they're indoor men's program. Sorry,
yeah,
but I'd
yeah,
love to see that come back.
100%,
We
absolutely,
want to see opportunities grow for women and men.
amen,
And can I just say something to what you said, like how underappreciated our sport is? Our sport is the sport that other sports define athleticism by.
amen,
So whether you're a basketball, and there's tremendous players, basketball, football, there's great athletes in every sport. But every other sport, when they talk about who's an athlete, is someone who can run fast or jump or throw or all those. Our sport is the definition of athleticism for every other sport. So we have we think biased, of course, we have the best athletes in sports. I say weightlifting would be in there, certainly some football, and there's great athletes in so many sports. I don't mean to underestimate anybody, but other sports define athleticism by what our sport is.
Joel, it's rare that the last 10 minutes of these podcasts, because they go for so long, we're an hour and 50, that the last 10 minutes is the fire. That conversation right there about growing and facilities and coaches and athleticism and Marshall, that this is the part of the podcast I hope everybody made it to, because this was an important part for you to hear out there as college and high school and club track and field coaches, man. That was a great way to wrap us up today here, man. Yeah, that was it. Your passion comes through clearly, my friend. I love it. I love it.
Oh yeah, you got to speak out for your sports.
That's right.
It's a
That's
tremendous
right.
sport, tremendous athletes, coaches. And I just feel like it's very underappreciated sometimes. So, well, you guys just run, jump, or throw, right? Yeah, there's a lot of complexity to be successful in those things. That's so underestimated in the things it takes to be successful.
That's right. That's it, man.
So
that's it, man. Well, hey, Joel, thank you so much, man. You know, one of the most important and valuable things that you can give me and us here at Gale Athletics is your time. You know, you're busy. You're in the middle of fall training, getting ready for indoor season and a facility coming along. There are a lot of things tugging at your time. So I'm always appreciative when guys and gals like yourself join us here on the podcast. It's a hefty thing. It's 2 hours. There's no softball in this thing. You've got to put time commitment to be here in the podcast. And so, right. Joel, I'm so grateful for you being such just your authentic, humble self, man. You're an absolute rock star. I'm just so thankful that you were with us here today.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you having me. It was an honor just that you would even be interested in something I might say or be able to contribute. So hopefully somebody got, because I get a lot out of hearing the podcast that you put on in the past, as I told you earlier. So I appreciate what you do. And it's always interesting to hear someone's journey. Everyone has a different journey to get where they're at.
That's it, man. That's exactly it. And each one of those journeys is important because of how different they are. You know, from college dropouts that become great college coaches, from non-track people who fall in love with it as a college and become a high school teacher just so they can coach track. I mean, there's so mmany different ways to get where we are. And it's all about servant leadership at the end of the day. And you are a great example of that, Joel. Thanks. So thank you so much, man. Thank you for being here today and listening. Hopefully you received value from today's podcast. If you did, here, I'm going to ask for a small favor. I don't ask this very much. Share this with someone else, just one. You ain't even got to put it on social media. I don't care, even though you know how much I love social media. Just email this episode, text this episode just to one person that needs to hear Joel's story, because Joel's story is important, and I think other people like yourself will receive value from it. So thanks again for being here this week. I hope you'll join us next week and receive value when we bring another awesome coach, another great track and field coach to you here on the Gale Athletics Connections podcast. Have an awesome day.